I want to take this opportunity to introduce our presenter, Sabia I Love, LCSW. As the Alaska Primary Care Association Integration Coordinator since 2017, Sabia I Love, LCSW, teaches motivational interviewing, the SBIRT process, ACES, brief interventions for primary care, and integrated team-based care with focus on rural application of services. She provides mentorship, guidance, and TTA to health centers throughout Alaska and beyond. A born Alaskan and daughter of pioneers, Sabila earned her Master of Social Work from Washington University in St. Louis, specializing in mental health and family therapy. From her early start in medical school work at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, Sabila has spent 20 years, her 20-year career serving Alaskan health centers, growing the front lines of cutting-edge quality improvement for the integration of medical and behavioral health, telehealth delivery, and team-based care in the 49th state. With her spare time, Sabila runs a private psychotherapy and coaching practice specializing in grief and loss. She also creates content for widows and widowers on her growing YouTube channel. Ms. Love can be found at her website, www.sabilai.love. And I'm going to go ahead and give it up to you, Sabila.
Great. Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And let me do my screen sharing here. Can you see that all right? Are you seeing the presenter's view?
Looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm so excited that everyone's here and that you're all ready to dig in for a little motivational interviewing for vaccine hesitancy. Hopefully this is going to be a valuable time for you. And that you'll walk away at least with one or two tips that you can use. While we're here, I want to do a warm welcome to my ASL users. I, in my former life, was an interpreter myself, so I just want to welcome those, and then my fellow social workers as well, and my medical colleagues. Okay, so this is a great slide. There's this grandmother and grandchild, and the granddaughter says, "Grandma, what's that mark on your arm?" And the grandmother says, "Well, that's my smallpox vaccine, honey." And the granddaughter says, "Well, why don't I have one?" Grandma says, "Because it worked." So I want to open up with a story for you. Back in the 1700s, the young milk maidens who tended to the cows would often get an infectious disease called cowpox. Now, this was a very mild case and not lethal like the smallpox virus that people could get. But what they found is that these maidens were not getting smallpox at all. So one curious physician saw a possible correlation and started taking the pus from the cowpox and began spreading it onto other people. Those people would get the cowpox, but what they did not get was the deadly smallpox virus. So we might consider this one of the world's first vaccinations. However, it wasn't until the mid-1900s that there was a worldwide smallpox vaccination campaign. And by the mid-1970s, smallpox was considered eradicated and we're able to discontinue vaccinations. So what I want to say about that is that stories are how humans learn best. And it's this kind of narrative that may give patients reassurance about all the vaccinations options that they have, because it demonstrates that vaccines are not new and that they do work. And this also would make a great poster for your clinic, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the presentation. So our objectives today is to dig in and learn four really good communication skills that complement MI, and then 4 best MI skills with a few bonus skills thrown in as well. And the goal is to be able to increase your own confidence to improve vaccination rates and these positive health outcomes, and to decrease your stress level when you're delivering patient care to vaccine hesitant people. Now, we need to understand that the most important thing about MI is that it's culturally respectful. It's been tested across cultures. It is highly relevant. It is evidence-based, and that if we understand what the spirit of motivational interviewing is, then we will be more effective whether we do it absolutely right or not. Because the studies show that people who demonstrated the spirit of MI in their work with clients versus those who held fast to a set of verbal tools or techniques were more successful in helping others achieve positive outcomes. And that spirit is a spirit of collaboration, that it is evocative, that we're always engaging with the client themselves, and that we're respecting their autonomy, and that it is always compassionate. Because the Dalai Lama says, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. And if you want to be happy, practice compassion. So is this really going to work? We need to have reasonable expectations for this training today. People who are real, true hardliners are not the ones that you're likely to reach, but it doesn't mean that you can't try to soften them up a bit to help them possibly change their minds down the road. Be more supportive of others who are getting the vaccine, and be more cautious to protect others, and so on. This is of great value in maintaining your provider-patient relationship, and that might be a reasonable expectation to have for this population. Also, to be able to help reduce some of the stress that you have around. I know many of my medical provider friends are honestly angry with people who aren't getting vaccinated, and that can affect your relationship with the patient and affect your ability to be able to influence them if that's coming through. So although we're going to address how to work with these hardliners, there are people who are on the fence about getting vaccinated. Just because they haven't been doesn't mean they're against it. And this is the population we're targeting today in this training. We're going to provide some communication tips and be able to help you not argue with them at all, which is what we call rolling with resistance. This is an MI skill. Now, when I say MI, for you medical providers, we're saying motivational interviewing, not a heart attack, because I know that's a medical term. So in regards to MI, you're not going to leave an MI practitioner today, but you may get a more in-depth exposure to what it looks like in action, because we're going to be doing role plays and doing some more engaging things with you, to be able to see how it can be useful to you as a healthcare provider when you're talking with the vaccine hesitant people. It is, since it's evidence-based, you know that this is going to be helpful to you, even if you're only taking 1 or 2 tips away with you. And if this is a review for you, that's fantastic. Then it'll help to refresh your memory. Now, doing an in-person training is really what's going to be most effective when you're learning MI, and then ongoing practice and supervision with it and all those kinds of things to get your skill level really high. But even a short training can make a difference. So the point of this training today is to help you decide really if you'd like to learn more, and that you can still make improvements in your communication skills. So what I want you to hear is what this training is not. Okay? This is not an education in the science of COVID-19 or the science around the vaccines. Now, while I have worked with medical teams for most of my career, I am not a medical provider, nor am I a scientist. What I am skilled at is I'm a clinician with over 20 years of experience, and working with change-resistant people, helping people to see things in new ways, to find motivation to do things differently. And that's really what we're all here to do in healthcare, isn't it? Help people change so they can be healthier and hopefully save lives down the road. In teaching motivational interviewing, I do this with healthcare professionals, so that's my specialty. The information provided in the role play that you're going to hear later and the resources provided for future consideration are just examples to showcase MI skills and starting points for ongoing learning. Providing medical and scientific education to your patients is in your hands as professionals. This training simply demonstrates what a conversation could look like with the vaccine hesitant patient using this spirit of MI. And then lastly, you might not agree with all these approaches, and that's okay. You might wonder how you could possibly have a conversation like this in a short period of time. And the truth is, research shows that a skilled MI conversation is actually more efficient not to mention successful, than traditional persuade and convince conversations. So keep in mind that this is only an introduction. And one good tip that you can take with you is going to be a time well spent for you. So what is vaccine confidence? Vaccine confidence is the trust that professionals and patients have in the recommended vaccine, in the providers who are administering the vaccines, which is you, and the process and policies that lead to vaccine development, and all of the licensure, authorization, manufacturing, and recommendations for use. So we as providers also need to have confidence in what we're doing as well. Now we're looking at the ambivalence to this vaccine hesitant patient. This is our target group, people who are on the fence, and addressing the person who's on the fence about it to be able to help them make a decision. Now, there's different categories of people. There's strongly hesitant, as the CDC categorizes people, and that includes people who have responded to a national survey saying that they would definitely not receive a vaccine when it's available. They categorize hesitant people as people who've answered probably not or definitely not receiving a vaccine when it's available. And then for them, the hesitant or unsure are people categorized as probably not, unsure, or definitely not. So means that there's a chance they might change their mind, is what that comes down to. And so the ambivalence is when someone feels two ways about something. On the one hand, they feel, they want, they fear, they need, and on the other hand, they're kind of wavering with other information, and they're just not sure which one to do. Now, this is a slide that represents the vaccine hesitant status of people across the United States. Now, as far as confidence goes, I'm not sure how confident I'm in this because I saw Alaska's and it didn't really make a lot of sense to me in terms of what I know about our state, but it's a general overview. So it can give you an idea of what you're looking at in terms of and you can see this at the CDC website, and it is interactive, and you can look at all the different areas and look at your community specifically to see what you might be looking at. But generally, it's anywhere between 2 and 26% of the population are hesitant. So let's talk about the art of pre-suasion. Okay, what can we do about the hardliners? If you want to change someone's mind, you need to think about pre-suasion. So essentially, you're removing the reflexive mental blocks that might make them reject your viewpoint or the evidence or education that you're presenting. Now, Professor Karen Douglas, who's a psychologist that studies conspiracy theories at the University of Kent, says the first step is to establish empathy. Often, these people are very worried about something, and this issue is important to them. It would not be constructive to go into the conversation in a hostile manner because this delegitimizes their concerns and might alienate them even more. So this brief introduction is going to demonstrate what this looks like in a skilled MI conversation. So what works and what doesn't work? Okay, this is really important for us to know. So I'm going to go over those 4 communication skills that we talk about that complement the spirit of MI. And then we're going to look at what doesn't work so we can compare and contrast. And then we're going to put the MI skills in action so you can not just hear about how they work, but see it firsthand and be able to understand why and how it's working. So before we get into the specific MI skills, let's just go over some generally good communication skills, some good patient engagement skills. Using names works. Okay. A person's most powerful connection to their self-identity is their own name. So when people use and remember our name, it can make us feel a little more important to them and more respected. When it might be the most important word in the world to someone, it can make a lasting impression. And when we feel respected, we're more likely to respect what you have to say to us. Even if we say their name wrong, it's still important to make an effort and then see if we can get it right. Like my name, Sevilla, is a name people get wrong all the time. And I'm okay with people saying it wrong. And I have no problem letting them know how to say it right. I'm used to it. So if you're having a hard time pronouncing someone's name, they're probably used to it too. Okay, so good humor works. Smiles, that gentle humor that can go such a long way to be able to set someone ease. You don't have to be a comedian to use your good humor. And I'm going to give an example of what that looks like. Just a friendly smile and a good eye contact can be a good way of doing that. If you're just not a funny person or a humorous person, it's okay. But you can lighten your countenance a bit. That will help. Okay, and this also helps to make you more real and less of an authority to be argued against. And we'll talk more about that authority because you, as a professional, have medical authority or professional authority, and you want to use it respectfully because it is effective. It does work when it's used right. Most patients will go along with their provider recommendations when they're ambivalent, and we can use clear, strong recommendations and still stay aligned with our client, even if we're in opposition to them. Now, vulnerability in the care that we give really works as well. Now, this is Brene Brown. She is a doctor of social work, and she's a researcher specializing in vulnerability. And I'm going to share some stuff that she says, but you need to remember that our patients are coming to us at their most vulnerable. They're sick, they're tired, they're scared, they're in pain, and they're often desperate for help from their suffering. And when we share our own vulnerable stories, it makes us less of the medical, political, or fear-based story that they may be resistant to, and shows our respect for them. It humanizes us and takes the them face off of us, the them, and makes us a human being in front of them as their partner. You're welcoming them into the circle of trust. So when it comes to vaccine hesitance, this fear of making the wrong choice for their health is often at the bottom of their reluctance. And that's where we want to reach them. And that's how we want to understand them in this space. So our own personal stories can help put us on a level playing field and create that space for trust and authentic conversations to happen so that education has a better chance of being received. Vulnerability, Brene Brown says, is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up when you cannot control the outcome. When you shut down vulnerability, you shut down opportunity. That's the end of that quote. So we can't control the outcome of what happens with our patients and when they go home, what choices that they make. So it's really important to know that what effective approaches are actually going to help our patients decide to get a vaccine or not. The goal of story sharing is to increase your connection with your patient so they feel more confident in you and confident in the vaccine. People are statistically more influenced through relationship than they are through science alone, which is why these things are so important. They have a relationship with you and may be more likely to listen to you than if you're just this medical person in a coat. So the last quote from Brene Brown is, connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they can derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. And strength is the key word there. Okay? If they're unsure and you have a strong medical recommendation and they feel heard and seen, they may be more likely to go with the vaccine. Now, is this manipulation? We ask ourselves sometimes, are we being manipulative when we purposely use people's names, intentional humor, conscious application of medical authority, or story sharing to invoke connection and trust? And I would say that we are using a positive influence, but not manipulation, because that has a malcontent associated with the intention. No one wants to go into healthcare and not help people. We're all here to help. We all want to heal and create health in our patients' lives. So any kind of education, tool, or skill set that we can have to help us reach that aim may be considered a noble use of our healing intentions. This is why having excellent communication and persuasive skills is good medical practice. It's good professional practice, because by doing so, you are forced to focus on them, to consider their needs, their desires, fears, and motivations. Using these skills are tools just as valuable and important as the medical or behavioral knowledge in your head, if they're in a constant state of resistance or reluctance to change their health habits, how can you help them? Think of these communication skills as the platform that you use to deliver good medical care that you're offering. Okay. All right. So I want to introduce my colleague who's going to be assisting me with the role plays coming up. This is my APCA colleague, Charlie Crooms, and you're going to be hearing her voice and seeing her face. She's a community health worker, a certified peer support specialist, and an Army veteran. In the following slides, Charlie will help me with the dialogue examples I'm going to show you as we go through these OARS, known as OARS approaches, so you're not getting too sick of listening to me talk. And then we're going to be doing a full role play later where I will share a little bit more about Charlie at that time. Okay, so let's talk about the writing reflex. The writing reflex is also known as a persuade and convince style. And it is a traditional approach that we use in all professional realms, but especially in medical care. I have the knowledge, I'm going to educate you, and now you go change your behavior. It's when we need to be right versus being a skillful listener. And a skillful listener is looking for opportunities to help influence and engage in a respectful manner for the good of the patient while honoring their autonomy. So we're just going to do a brief narrative here so you can see what this looked like. I'm going to be the provider and Charlie's going to be my client. So as the provider, I'm going to say, Charlie, now that I've explained the risk factors, you can see why you need to make this a priority. You're long overdue.
Yes, but I just don't trust it.
Well, if you cared about your health, you'd listen to the science behind this vaccine and accept this is the best choice to keep you safe and healthy.
Yeah, well, I've heard too many stories that scare me, worse than getting the virus. That has such a high survival rate.
Well, the potential side effects are nothing compared to what could happen if you got sick with the virus itself.
Besides, I hate needles. I never even get the flu vaccine, and I've been fine all these years without it.
Well, Charlie, you're putting yourself at risk, and this is the safest choice you can make. Think of all the people in your life you'd be putting at risk if you don't take this, let alone the society at large. This is really important for you to do. Okay, end of the narrative. So this is not motivational interviewing. Okay, that is an example of the persuade and convince, which doesn't work. What we get is the patient yes butting us all down the road. We are not getting anywhere with them, and they're not being heard for whatever concerns that they have. This is not a successful conversation, but unfortunately, this is what a lot of the conversations end up looking like. And you can see these probably for an example in your own life. Think of your friends or your family or your partners when you're arguing with them. This is what it looks like, isn't it? So we could do it differently so it can be more effective. So this confidence ruler is something that I'm going to introduce to you that you're going to see ways you could use it. A confidence ruler will help patients to discover their own interest in considering or making a change in their life, right? So it helps them to be able to express in their own words their desire for change. And we call that change talk. So examine their ambivalence about change is something they get to do when we use the confidence ruler, among other things, in MI. They can plan and begin the process of change. It helps to elicit and strengthen their change talk. And it also helps to enhance their confidence in taking action and noticing that even small incremental changes are really important. And it helps to strengthen their commitment. All right, so, and you're going to see an example of what that looks like as we go along. Okay, so we want to be able to help the client develop discrepancy because change isn't going to occur without it. And patients, when we're having an argument with them, don't get to develop discrepancy. Using MI skills helps them to do that. So we're helping the client to see that some behaviors don't mesh with ultimate goals that are important and valuable. So we can help the client to see the difference between the core values and their behaviors and to be able to define the most important goals for themselves. And what we're doing is we're creating a gap where the client is and where she wants to be. And it also allows the client to realize current behavior isn't leading to the goal that they have in mind. And then they're more open to change. And you're going to see what that looks like. So let's talk about OARS, which is an acronym for open-ended questions, affirmative statements, reflective listening, and summary statements. And when we're communicating with clients, we always want to remember our rule, which is this concept of resisting telling them what to do and being able to understand their motivations, to listen with empathy, and to empower them. So our rationale for open-ended questions is that it requires more than a yes or no answer. And what they do is giving you and them the opportunity to respond with reflections or summary statements that express that empathy. Too many yes or no questions feels like an interrogation, and it can put the client on the defensive. It could hamper their sense of safety. And so we want to make sure to set them at ease. So here's an example of a closed-ended question. Charlie's going to help me with this. So Charlie, do you want to get the vaccine today?
No.
Okay, so I didn't get any more information out of her. But if I ask her an open-ended question, Charlie, I see you're not vaccinated. I'm curious how you feel about it.
I just don't think it's safe. I'm hearing way too many scary things about it.
Thank you. So you can see how the second question, the open-ended question that doesn't require a yes or no answer, to ask yourself in your mind before you question someone, if it's a yes or no answer, unless it's something super clear cut, how can you rephrase it to make it open-ended and get more information out of them? Now, if we had a longer training, we do more on that, but let's move on to the next slide. So affirmations. The rationale and the reason we want to use affirmations is that they are made in response to what our client has said. So what we're doing is we're recognizing their strengths and their successes and their efforts to change. And when we are able to recognize those, then they help to increase the confidence that the patient has in their ability to change. And you'll see an example of that. We want to be careful to avoid sounding insincere. A lot of times we want to cheer our clients on with, wow, that's so great, man. You must just been so proud of that effort. That was wonderful. Well, you've really been making some good changes. This is kind of cheerleading, and it's not a bad thing. There's a place and time for that. But with MI, we generally want to stick to the affirmation that you'll see and avoid cheerleading. So Charlie is going to help me with this. So Charlie, could you start us off here?
Okay. It was a long haul getting in here today. No one in my family was supportive of me getting this vaccine, but I've got questions that I'd like answered so I can decide for myself.
Charlie, it sounds like you're a woman with a mind of her own and you're looking for answers.
Yes, I am.
So in that, what I did was I reinforced Charlie's autonomy by affirming it. You're a woman that has a mind of her own. And because obviously she went through a lot to get there today to see me, and went against her family. And so that was a big thing. I want to reinforce that because this is something obviously she probably feels good about herself or feels proud of that she was able to reach out and come against the wishes of her family. So I want to reinforce that. Okay. So in reflective listening, it allows us to be able to really intently listen. It's this expression that we have when we're really understanding their situation, so they know that they've been heard. And what it does, it builds empathy that we have for them, that they feel it as well. It encourages their own statements about change. Now, if we get it wrong, it's okay because your clients will correct you, and then it'll help you to get a little more information. So I'm going to give you an example of what it looks like when we get it wrong. And then Charlie and I are going to give you an example of what it looks like when you get it right and why they're both effective. So Charlie, could you start us off?
Sure. So my husband has been pretty serious about not getting this vaccine. He's always going on about it in the government and the stuff. So we haven't been vaccinated.
It sounds like you're not ready to get vaccinated.
No, I'm pretty sure I'd like to get vaccinated, but my biggest fear is that my husband won't support me because he's dead set against it.
Oh, I see. So you're wanting the vaccine. You just don't want to upset your husband if you do it.
Yeah, now you got it.
Okay. See, so this is where my patient corrected me, and it let her know I was trying to hear her, even though I got it wrong. And she was pleased to know that I was making the effort. So let's take a look at what it looks like when I do it right and why it's still effective. Charlie?
So my husband's been pretty serious about not getting this vaccine. He's always going on about it and the government and stuff. So I haven't been vaccinated.
So your husband has strong feelings about not taking the vaccine, but I'm hearing that maybe you're not so sure that it's a bad thing.
Yes, that's right. I have some questions I'm hoping you can answer for me.
Thank you, Charlie. So you can see why they're both effective. So don't be afraid to get it wrong when you're doing that. Now, summaries are the next thing we want to look at, because we're going to have an opportunity for one of you in the audience to volunteer to do a summary later on in this presentation. But summaries require that you listen very carefully to what the patient has said. And they're really also a good way to end a session when you're short on time, because you can put it all in one lump, let them know you heard them, and be able to control the conversation enough to go on to whatever next topic you need to do. So it's a really effective skill to have. So when we're working with our clients, reminding of the rule, resisting telling them what to do, understanding their motivations, listening with empathy, and empowering them. You're going to see demonstrations of this all along. So we're going to do an ORS exercise with you so you can practice your skills a little bit. So pay attention, because you're going to have a poll, and the poll is going to require you to make an answer so we can see what they look like. Now, this ORS poll challenge is, I'm going to have 4 different questions to examine the ORS approach. 3 of the questions are going to be a series of answers to choose from. So you're going to choose the best answer. And then the final question is going to ask for a volunteer from the audience to unmute their microphone and respond with the best answer. And that's going to be a summary challenge. All right. So hopefully we'll have one brave person in the audience. And here is the first poll that we'll have you guys do. And I'm going to have Sean assist us with this. So your open-ended question challenge poll is, I was so afraid when I got the news about my cousin being in the hospital from COVID that I made an appointment to talk to you about the vaccine. I haven't gotten it yet. I've been too afraid. So which one of these answers best represents an open-ended question? Good. Excellent, thank you. So you can see in this that there's several different options. Now, the first one, I hear you, sounds like it hits close to home, is a great reflection back to the patient, but it's not open-ended. The open-ended answer would be, tell me more about your vaccine fears, because that opens up the opportunity for the patient to give you more information. That is the question. It doesn't sound like a question, but it is. Tell me more about your vaccine fears. It's a statement, but it's also a question that opens up. So great, thank you very much. And let's go on to the next one. I'm not able to, oh, there we go. Okay, so the next one is the affirmation. This is the same scenario, just worded differently. We're going to look for the best affirmation answer. Now, my cousin was young and healthy like me. She didn't even meet any of the risk factors that I'd heard about. I figured if I got infected, it'd just be like a bad cold or something, but she was intubated. It kind of freaked me out, and that's why I'm here to talk to you about it. So which one's the best answer of these that represents the best affirmation? Good, thank you. Appreciate all you guys' great participations. Fantastic, just fantastic. So let's talk about this. So the affirmation is the best answer here is number 2. Okay, so after seeing that, you're ready to learn more and maybe get vaccinated yourself. So the affirmation is when we want to take out of the conversation what we want to reinforce, and what we want, our goal is to help the patient get vaccinated. So she's saying a lot here, but when you take out the one thing that you want to affirm that is true for the patient, that she'd seen something, she was afraid, and now she's ready to learn more and maybe get vaccinated. Okay, some of the other answers, sounds like you're not ready to take the vaccine, is a statement and not an affirmation, and it wasn't really accurate because she's open to taking the vaccine. And so we don't want to, even though she might not be ready, we don't want to reinforce that because she might also be ready. Okay, good, thank you. And to the next one, we're going to do the reflection challenge poll. Now we want to pick the best reflection here. Let's give this a try. So the patient says, who knew my young, healthy 26-year-old cousin would be intubated in the hospital? We weren't worried that before she got sick. I mean, our uncle had COVID and it was nothing more than a bad cold for him. So which one would be the best answer here? Great, thank you guys. Such good participation, appreciate this so much. So yes, number 4 is really the most effective answer here, because what we're doing here when we say after your cousin went to the hospital, it made you realize this was potentially a bigger risk than you imagined. So reflections are often looking at the heart of what the person is bringing to you. And our patient was scared, and they weren't worried about it before, but now they are. So what does that mean? That means that they realized it was a little bit bigger risk than they had imagined. And so the other answers are, they can be good for other things, but this one's the best reflection. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next one. Now here is where we're going to look for a volunteer from the audience to be able to summarize this. So put your summary hats on, and what I need you to do is, after I read this, what I'd like you to do is unmute yourself if you're willing to speak up. If you're the first one to speak up, then the system will automatically highlight you, and you'll be the one to do the reflection back, do the summary, excuse me, to do the summary back. And what I want you to know about a summary is you don't have to repeat everything that the person said, but to be able to get the heart of what they said and the most important pieces of what they just said. Because what I want you to think about is, how do I make her feel like I just heard what she had to say to me? Okay, so here's what I'm going to say as the patient. Doc, it had me totally freaked out to see my young, healthy cousin intubated in the hospital from COVID. We never thought any of us would get sick. Seriously, my uncle was fine after getting it. We felt bad for the old and unhealthy people that were dying, but I mean, I figured we were pretty safe since our risk factors were so low. I wasn't against the vaccine or anything. I just heard conflicting stories and figured it was safer to develop natural immunity than take this controversial vaccine. But now I'm realizing I'm not so safe after all, and that's why I'm here today. So Sean, if you could assist me with this, and who would like to do a summary for this?
So it sounds like with everything that happened with your cousin, you would like more information about getting the vaccine and getting answers to, the concerns and questions that you might have about it.
Good, good. See, and I love, that was a great summary because it wasn't extensive. It didn't go into a lot of detail. She didn't need to, she could have, but what she did was she got at the heart of it. And now if I had just told her that story and she said that back to me, I would have felt very heard. And so that was excellent. Thank you for volunteering. Appreciate that. And so it's not as scary as people think. A lot of times people get caught up on, oh my God, I gotta get all this detail. And no, you just got to get the heart of what they said. That's the most important thing. That's the spirit of motivational interviewing. So we're going to be doing a full role play here. And Charlie is going to be using her own name in the role play we're going to do. And she's going to be playing a fictional character to help us learn these 4 different MI approaches and the bonus skills that you can use. And I want to thank Charlie for consulting with me in helping to create a culturally relevant role play by pulling on her own personal lived experience as a Black woman and as a mother to children who are Black and Alaska Native Inupiat. We're going to use a bell. Oh my goodness. So we're going to use a bell to begin and start the role play. And if you give me just 1 second here to pull up that. I'm using an app, and I always have to get through the ads first. Okay, so this is the sound we're going to use when we start the role play, so you know when it begins and ends, because I'm going to be talking about the skills that I'm using in this, so you understand exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So this is the beginning sound, and this is the end when we finish the role play for that page. Okay, gonna have a little applause. So in this role play, I'm going to be the provider, and I'm going to be seeing a 50-year-old middle-class single Black female with children. Now, my patient is vaccine hesitant, and we're going to be discussing this as we go along. So we're going to be beginning the role play now. Hello, Charlie. Thank you for waiting on me. We've had an influx of people getting vaccinated today, but it's super inspiring. One step closer to ending this pandemic and trashing these masks, you know. I bet some people really got rich selling these things. Am I right?
I wish I'd bought stock in masks before this whole thing started too. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. It's been a while. Let's get caught up, shall we?
That's why I'm here, I guess.
Yeah. So today we're going to do your well woman exam, take some labs. And since I see you haven't been vaccinated against the coronavirus yet, and we are on a roll here today at the clinic, we can get yours done too. What do you say?
Oh, nope. I heard people get sick from those things. I don't want that.
Thank you. Okay, so now we know that my patient, Charlie, is vaccine hesitant. And I don't know how hesitant she is, and I need to find out so I can understand how I'm going to work with her around this. But in this, you recognize that I used my patient's name, and I used humor to connect and set her at ease. I was friendly and smiling and connected with her. I made a positive assumption about her when I said, hey, we could go ahead and get you vaccinated today too. I didn't assume she didn't want it because she wasn't vaccinated yet. Now, I could feel that way if I were angry and had been working in hospitals and seeing people dying and had all those experiences. But instead, I'm just making a positive assumption. Oh, sure, you want to get vaccinated. No, but I didn't assume that she did either. So that's an important key. Okay, so we have established hesitancy. What do we do next? So in this next slide, you're gonna see me ask my patient to share her concerns, because I want to connect and understand why she has a problem with the vaccine. So I know where I can start to provide education, and I want to open the door for that. So we're going to begin this role play. Oh, I see. Okay. So this vaccine's not on your to-do list today, is it? No problem, Charlie. I mean, I know you've always been one to take good care of your family's health as well as your own. And I just want to be sure that I address your concerns as best I can, if you'll allow it, because it sounds like you've got some valid concerns. Or I know you would have been vaccinated a long time ago. So I want to ask, would it be all right with you if we talk about it just for a couple minutes, so I understand exactly what's on your mind?
I just don't know that it's totally safe. I don't trust that it came out so fast. I just heard a lot of bad things about it, and I'm not so sure who to trust.
Right. So you want to be sure that any choice that you make is the best and safest one for your family. I get that. I feel the same way, and I'm here to support you and help provide you with the best information I can about the vaccine. Okay. So now I know what the patient is worried about, and I was able to open up the dialogue in a way that helps to set her at ease, let her know that I'm interested in hearing how she feels about it, rather than just starting to lecture her about why she needs to take the vaccine. Okay. And I've also been able to reflect back to her looking for the best in her, that she cares about her health. She cares about the health of her family. And so I'm highlighting that to help develop a discrepancy in my patient's mind. She's here for a medical appointment. So even though she hasn't been vaccinated, and I might be angry at people like that, she's here taking care of her health today. So that means she does care. And I want to highlight that to help her with that discrepancy. Okay, so for the next slide, we're going to be asking her about how confident she is. We're going to use that confidence ruler. How confident is she in this vaccine? And that's going to give me more information so I know where to start with. Okay, so here we're going to start this. So I hear your concerns about the safety of this vaccine, and I'd like to address those concerns if I may.
I guess I've seen it does some good for some people, but I'm still not sure it's safe for me and my family. But yes, I'm willing to talk about it.
Okay, good. Thank you. I've been asking some of my patients this question, and I'm curious what your take on it would be since you have safety concerns. So if you don't mind if I ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all confident and 10 being totally confident, what number would you choose that represented how confident you are in this vaccine?
Well, I guess I'd be about a 4, I guess.
Okay, all right. So let me ask you another question. Why are you a 4 and not a 0?
Well, my kids got their vaccines when they were growing up and they're just fine. And I got mine when I was a kid and I'm fine. I just don't have a lot of confidence in medical care these days.
So let me see if I get this right. On one hand, you aren't entirely trusting of the medical system. But on the other hand, you support vaccines in general. I mean, evidenced by the choices you made in the past to protect your children from diseases. And you say you've benefited from them as well. So are there any other reasons?
Just seems so political. Half my family's for it and half my family's against it. The Inupiat side of my family remembers the 1918 flu epidemic and how it wiped out most of their village because they didn't have a vaccine. And the diphtheria vaccines were brought in by sled dogs, and that's what started the tradition of the Iditarod. But the Black side of my family remembers the Tuskegee experiments and still haven't fully regained trust in the medical system. So, historically, Black folks haven't had much luck with things like this. I'm not sure where I fit in.
Wow, I can see why you would feel polarized on this issue. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, I have another question, given all that information you just shared. What would it take for you to say, get from a 4 to a 9?
I would just need to see more evidence that it won't hurt me or my family.
Excellent, thank you. So in this, so Charlie gave me so much information right there that's really going to help me be able to work with her on helping her with her ambivalence and to develop more discrepancy. What I could have done here is do a summary of what she said, but my point on this slide is to highlight how we would use a confidence ruler, okay? But in a natural conversation, I probably would have summarized what she said a bit and then gone on to the confidence ruler. And now I know that she just wants to know that it's safe and no one in her family is going to get hurt. So in this next slide, I'm going to ask permission to share education information. And I'm going to be reflecting back what the patient's saying so she feels heard. And you're going to see this empathy demonstrated through a careful summary. And you're also going to see me use a respectful medical authority with my patient to help persuade her. Okay, so we're going to begin. So you're concerned about the risks associated with the vaccine that's being distributed so quickly, and why it isn't safe for your growing, why it is or isn't safe for your growing children. I mean, you have a legitimate historical evidence that stands out for you in regards to trusting the medical community, and you've also seen how your children's ancestors suffered without a vaccine. I've heard a lot of these stories myself, and honestly, I had my own initial concerns given all the wild information that's out there. But I have to say, as a trained medical provider, I am diligent about following vaccine safety and the science around it very closely. So as part of your Well Woman exam today, would it be okay if I go over with you what I know about the vaccine? So like why I believe it's safe, even though it's been rolled out so quickly?
Yeah, I'm not sure you'll change my mind, but I'd be open to hearing about that.
Sure, you're skeptical and still not sure. That's not a problem at all. I'm glad we get to have this chat. Okay. So in this, you can see where I've opened up the patient, still a little, she's still hesitant, but now she's willing to hear what I have to say. Okay, I've used my medical authority in a respectful way with her to help get her attention, but not put her on the defensive. And then I was also validating what she said in a reflection. Sure, you're still skeptical. You're skeptical and still not sure. So rather than trying to do something else, I'm just letting her know that, yeah, I heard that. And it's not a problem at all. And I'm really glad that we get to talk about this. So the door is open. She's opened the door for us to talk. Now, here's a bonus skill that you can use. Your patients are going to have varying concerns about the vaccine, and that you need to be able to address them, or know your education points and be prepared with handouts. We can't know everything about everything. We can't know everything about everyone's conspiracy theories or their government issues or anything. So we want to keep it to the science and keep it focused on the medicine itself as best we can. And when we don't know, when we can use handouts to be able to talk to people about certain points. So what I want to drive home is that we're avoiding arguing with them. And we want to focus on the disease prevention itself. And we can do that by using our personal vulnerability, continuing to engage with them by using their names. So let's start this next role play. So many people have concerns and want answers, Charlie, including me. I mean, I know it feels like the whole process was so fast, but since you are open to hearing it, here's some background information. At the beginning of the COVID pandemic, our government passed an emergency use authorization, which super sped up the whole vaccine process. It did not allow the pharmaceutical companies to cut any corners or shortcut the process at all. But what it did do was cut out a lot of the bureaucracy and the paperwork and the time it takes to do these things. So these first two vaccines use messenger RNA, and the researchers have been studying that for decades. We have decades of research behind vaccines. So once the vaccine was developed, they were able to speed through the testing phases, which usually takes years. Now, they started with a very small group of volunteers, and then a larger group, and finally a very large group, thousands of volunteers. And at the same time they were doing that, the vaccines were already in production, creating thousands of doses while still in the testing phases. So all of these things were possible because of the large amounts of funding that the federal government gave the pharmaceutical companies up front. They just threw money at them and said, get going and do this. So you see, this isn't our grandparents' vaccine. Our technology has vastly improved our ability to keep us safe and healthy at more effective and rapid rates than ever before. I mean, this is actually one of the safest vaccine rollouts in history because of the technology that we have helping us along. So after hearing about how the vaccine was rolled out so quickly and about why we can know that it's safe, what are your thoughts?
Well, I didn't know why and how they were able to get it out so quickly and still have it be safe, but thank you. That helps me understand more about what I'm getting myself into if I take this shot, but I'm still not sure. What about my kids?
Sure, it's a good question. So what I know is that the FDA reviewed a study of about 2,200 kids from the ages of like 12 to 15. And in that group, half of them were given the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. The other group was given a harmless fake placebo shot. Well, a week after the second dose was given, research showed no cases of COVID-19 in the 1,005 kids that were given the vaccine. Now, in the control group, the 978 children that had the placebo, there were 16 cases of COVID-19. So none of the children had been previously diagnosed with COVID-19 before they started the experiment. So the results suggest that the vaccine is 100% effective at preventing the COVID-19 virus in this age group. So what do you think?
Okay, so what about the long-term effects?
Well, because COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials only started in the summer of 2020, it's not yet clear that the vaccines will have long-term effects. However, this is so important to know. Charlotte, vaccines rarely have long-term effects, and we've been studying vaccines for decades. So a portion of the children ages 12 to 15 enrolled in the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine study were monitored for safety for at least 2 months after being given the second dose of the vaccine. And as part of its first request for emergency use authorization, Pfizer created a safety monitoring plan. Now that plan includes the monitoring of adolescents given the vaccine. And in addition, all over the US, all vaccination providers are required to report serious adverse events, such as allergic reactions, to a national program called the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. So anything that's happened since all of this has gone on has been reported. And what we know statistically is that this vaccine is safe. Is that helpful to you?
Yeah, it helps. It's given me a lot more to think about.
Yeah, you know, it's really been a long ride for everyone, and your concerns are understandable. If you don't mind me sharing, I have personally treated people who've gotten very sick from COVID-19. And I know you've heard all kinds of stories about people dying and suffering and stuff, but I'd like to share a more personal story with you if that'd be okay. It's a little bit sad, but I have to say our stories are important, and I'd like to share with you. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to hear it.
Well, one of my favorite cousins is married with 2 children, and one's in middle school, the other's in 3rd grade, and her husband, Greg, was diagnosed on Thursday with COVID. And the next day, his symptoms got worse, and tragically, he died before she could even get him to the hospital. This was a huge shock to our whole family, and it's devastated my cousin and her children. I can only imagine what they've been going through, and it's made a big impact on my commitment to helping my patients stay safe and healthy whenever I can. Now, this is just my family's story, but I'm curious, what are your thoughts when you hear stuff like this?
Well, I'm sure sorry about what happened to your family. That sounds horrible. I can only imagine if that were to happen to my family. That's kind of why I've been so unsure about this for so long.
Thank you. Okay, so in this, I want to drive this home. You don't have to share all, sad, dirty stories in your family to be vulnerable. You can share anything you want, or you don't have to share at all. You might be able to invoke some stories from your client to say, hey, do you know anybody that's been harmed by COVID, or do you have any stories? And maybe you can evoke their stories, but that sharing, and you could say something to them like, you know what, I've had death in my family from COVID as well. So you don't have to get all deep and dirty about it. It depends on the relationship you have with your patient. So the idea is to share vulnerably, but share wisely. Okay, so this story that I shared here in this role play is actually a story that a medical provider, friend of mine, does use with her patients on occasion when it's useful, because it's a true story for her family, and she's found it to be effective. So here's a bonus skill to take a look at. Now, what we're going to do in this is I've got 2 bonus skills for you. Now, this is asking our patients 2 questions for helping them to develop this discrepancy and resolve ambivalency. So we're going to ask them what might be bad about taking this vaccine. Now, after I ask her that, I'm going to also ask her what might be good about taking the vaccine. I'm going to ask her what might be bad about it first, because I want her to end with what might be good about it. And that way her focus and my focus is more on the good. Now, if you get it backwards, don't freak out, it's okay. But if you can do it in this order, end with the thing that you want to help move them more towards. So that's kind of the general rule about that. Okay, so we're going to start this. So Charlie, I got a question for you. What might be bad about taking this vaccine?
What could be bad about it? I could get sick, my kids could get sick, and it might have long-lasting side effects.
Okay, thank you. So now I know what she thinks might be bad about it. Now we move on to the next one. I'm going to ask her what might be good about it. Okay, so start. So Charlie, I hear that. You know, you think that maybe, what if you got sick, or what if your kids got sick from taking the vaccine? Let me ask you another question. What might be good about taking this vaccine?
Well, what might be good about it? It could prevent me and my family from getting sick. It could prevent us from having long-lasting side effects, from getting the disease. But most importantly, it could keep us from dying from getting the disease.
Those sound like good reasons. Are there any other reasons?
Well, it could possibly make it easier for us to go out in public more safely and to have fun with our friends and family again.
Okay, so on the one hand, you know, what could be bad about it is what if you got sick, but it sounds like on the other hand, you see that it could maybe help actually prevent your family from getting sick, and maybe even, you know, somebody dying in a worst case scenario. And then you also see that it could help to prevent you from having those long-term effects that a lot of people have had from getting COVID. And that you also would like to get out in public more safely and see those friends and family again. So those all sound like pretty valid reasons. So you saw that I was able to do a summary of what the patient said and really focus on her reasons for change, really focus on her reasons for getting this vaccine while still validating her feelings of concern for it. Okay. So in this next one, this fourth step, we're going to be doing an affirmation of her autonomy. And we're also going to do a strong vaccine recommendation, right? So this is possible to be doing both of these. So we're going to start this role play now. So it's clear, Charlie, you definitely don't want to get this virus, and you don't want any of your family members to get it.
You got that right.
Yeah. You know, as a medical professional who spent a lifetime studying and advising patients on how to have their healthiest lives, I strongly believe in this vaccine, which is why I took it myself. I gave it to my own family members, my own kids, and I strongly recommend it to all of my patients. I think you should get it today too. But having said that, this is a decision that only you can make. What do you think you'll choose?
Well, you've made some good points and made me think about this very deeply. I think there are more benefits to taking the vaccine than not taking the vaccine and getting the virus.
It sounds like you're ready to get vaccinated today. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think I'll do it.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate that you're ready to take the time to make careful decisions about your health. I wish all my patients were so diligent. I think you're making the right decision. Do you think you'll choose, what do you think you're going to choose for your children?
Well, I want to keep my children safe, so I'm going to take my kids to get vaccinated too.
Okay, well, when we're done with your well woman exam, our nurse is going to walk you over to the vaccination station and get you hooked up right away. What do you say?
Sounds good to me.
So we've been able to help our patient resolve ambivalence. Yes, this is a role play, but this is not an unrealistic outcome. When you see MI in action done very well, you can see people go from being completely resistant about an idea to completely 180. When you go in and you watch a live role play of two people actually talking in real time, it less than 10 to 15 minutes, people have completely changed their minds for really big issues in their lives. And that's because in all of these opportunities, I've helped her to talk about what she thinks, what she believes, what she feels, provided education so she can weigh that in her mind. She wasn't completely against the vaccine. She was just scared of it. And I was able to help resolve some of her fears. Okay, so that is what helped the patient to move forward when she felt respected in the whole process. So what if the patient continues to say no even after all of that? So we want to let our patients know that we're going to offer the vaccine again with the strong recommendation. So we maintain our consistency with that because we want to keep strong in our position and respectful in our position to help with that vaccine confidence. So we want to be honest about what we don't know and what's not known. We want to reflect the heart of their intention to avoid argument. We want to offer reading material. And just in the end, we have to be able to relax and know that we've done the best for our patient. Okay, so here's the next brief role play. So Charlie, after hearing all that today, what do you think you're going to choose?
You know, I'm still not fully impressed with this vaccine. It's not for me. I don't want it at all.
Okay, I understand this isn't something you're willing to do right now, and it is your decision to make. May I share one more thought with you before we move into your yearly exam? I promise I won't mention it anymore today.
Sure, go ahead. It's not going to make any difference.
Okay, thanks for letting me say just one more thing. If I were in your shoes, I might be hesitant too, looking for answers just like you are. You know, it's in my heart to say, Charlie, that as your medical provider, I firmly believe that COVID-19 vaccines are effective at helping protect against severe disease and death from the virus that causes COVID-19 and all the variants currently circulating. And I have to say that I also believe that the benefits of this vaccination outweigh the known and potential risks, which are rare. So that being said, I do know about you is that you have a desire to keep your family safe and healthy. It's a top priority for you, or you wouldn't be so diligent asking the right questions. Do I have that right about you, Charlie?
Yes, it is very important to me.
Yeah, I hear you. So today isn't the day, but I just want you to know if you ever change your mind, you can come back anytime or hit up any vaccination clinic of your choice. And one last thing, or I won't sleep tonight. Would you consider taking home some printed information for your family's consideration?
Yeah, you can give me whatever handouts you want, but don't expect miracles.
No problem at all. And I really want to appreciate you for hearing me out and letting me do my job today. So let's just move on to the rest of your health and get you on your way.
Sounds good to me.
So in this, I was able to maintain my position and still be respectful of the patient, still throw a little more information in there, because what we may be able to do is possibly change their mind down the road and maintain our relationship with the patient. Because if they change their mind, it may be because of the conversation we had today. All right. So some of the last tips I want to throw out here is that we could potentially ask their advice. Now, if you've got somebody that's really oppositional, helping to bring them in is another trick you can use. I'm not saying that you have to do this, but it is just something to throw in your toolbox. It occasionally could be useful for you to align with your patient. So let's take a look at what that could be. And we're going to accept and consider just this one more creative move. So let's show this. So Charlie, you're choosing not to get this vaccine today. Could I ask your advice on something?
Sure, go ahead.
Other people feel strongly about not getting the vaccine, and you're not alone. As a medical provider who believes in the vaccine and that it could actually save my patient's life someday, how do you think I could better deal with this for my other patients who feel like you do? I mean, I want to help, but I also want to be respectful.
Well, I appreciate you hearing me out, and I appreciate you not being too pushy. I guess you can help your other patients by hearing them as well.
Thank you so much, Charlie. You know, our visits are always helping me to be a better provider, and I appreciate your feedback. So don't get too overwhelmed with feeling like, all these dialogues are too much, don't have time for all these conversations. Take these as ideas and tips, tricks, and tools that you can put back in your toolbox and consider, hey, could I use this here with this particular patient? And if it's right, maybe it'll pop up for you in your mind and you can give it a try and see how it feels, see how it works for you. You're going to have your own way of having these conversations, which is why at the beginning of the presentation, we talk about the spirit of MI. When we're being respectful, we're being evocative, we're really being able to listen to what the patient has to say. We're using that spirit. So don't get too worried about doing things exactly right or using exactly this confidence ruler or any of this. They're all useful. Now, what I also want to say is that when we're in a counseling situation, we want the patient to be able to talk more than we talk. But in a medical setting, when we have a short period of time to provide education, because that's the goal, is to have the patient understand the science behind this vaccine in this particular situation. If you're talking about cancer or any other things, the doctor, the provider is going to need to talk more. So the goal with this type of MI use, where a provider may talk a little more, is that the patient is feeling heard and respected and having that open door to be able to hear what we have to share with them. That's the goal and how we're using these MI skills in this particular setting. Now, if you're talking with your teenage kid or you're in a behavioral health setting, you're trying to get somebody into treatment for substance abuse, conversation is going to look a little bit different, but the tools are the same. Okay. So we also want to be able to answer questions, right? So I want you to know that it's not okay. That it's okay to not know everything and that we can find out different things that we can share. So for example, questions people might ask us are like, how are the first COVID vaccines different from most other vaccines? Are there severe allergic reactions that have been reported? Should I be worried? Should I be worried about how fast the vaccines were developed? Has the vaccine been tested long enough to know whether there are any long-term effects? Are there still unanswered questions about the vaccine? Is there a microchip in the vaccine? So these are questions that people have actually commonly asked about this to their healthcare providers. So just a few examples. And you're not going to have the answers to everything. So being in a state of, gosh, I'm not sure about the answer to that, but let's see if we can find out together. And one of the ways we can prepare ourselves as healthcare provider teams is, number one, knowing the importance of leadership. And so the leadership can set a priority for the staff to be able to educate themselves. So they set aside time at staff meetings. For example, these are ideas. To be able to create that continuity of messaging amongst all staff. So we're all on the same page about providing a strong medical recommendation for the vaccine. And this is how we're talking about it and being able to have those conversations as a team. So you're sharing that out with one another and learning from one another on how you're having those conversations. Have somebody be able to create handouts and leaflets available, and maybe tagging somebody that's going to do that. I'm going to give you some ideas of places to look, but as I said in the beginning of this is your responsibility. This may be a different training that you get on all the science around the vaccines. Today we're talking about communication skills. And so in communicating to our patients, we also can do handouts in the lobby. We can do messaging on walls. We can put up videos on the TV, and there are things on YouTube that you can access and play in your lobby that people are just going to be hearing whether they like it or not. You can set aside that time in staff meetings for the education. So maybe one week one team will take one topic or like one resistant topic around COVID and be able to present on it in a staff meeting. This is what I learned. So you're constantly sharing information. It's a great team-based approach. And just being also able to practice MI skills together. So today has been a taste of what that can look like. If you have somebody on your staff, or you can bring in trainers from your community to be able to help you be able to practice it so you get better at it. This is what I want you to know, is that communicating in a new way is like telling somebody to walk differently. You're going to do it for a minute, but then you're going to go right back to walking the way you always do, because it's a conscious effort, which is why it takes additional training, additional education, and practice. So it's good to be able to practice with one another. Now, when I do all-day trainings with people, we have people get together in groups and they work on these skills with one another, and they kind of get a feel for, it's not always as easy I think it's going to be. There's always someone that's going to throw you for a loop. So when you get too caught up in the skill itself is when you get lost. When you remember and bring yourself back to the spirit of MI, to evoking to the compassion, to the empathy, to be able to provide respectful education, asking their opinions, asking their permission to share education. Those things are going to help you be more successful with a client. And then ultimately we have to be able to accept that they're just giving a hard line and saying no if that's the case, but know that you may have planted a seed for them, and that is the most effective thing that we can do. Okay, so this is just an article and a video, different videos that you can take a look at, things to consider. There's also a handout that is gone with this presentation, and that you can be able to use as well. And what we're going to do next is that we're going to open this up for some Q&As that may have come in. And I'm going to turn it over to Sean to be able to manage that, so we have a little bit of time to talk about some of these scenarios and possibilities that people may be more curious about. Sean?
Thank you, Sophia. We'll open up. It looks like we have Jesse has a question. Go ahead and take yourself off mute.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the information. I thought it was really important that we got a chance to talk about this type of hesitancy that is going to come up in a lot of different situations. I think not just in the medical setting, but even with our family and friends. So thank you. I just wanted to add a comment. Some of us who are participating may know that Dr. William Miller is the co-creator of motivational interviewing, and he's actually with the University of New Mexico. He's a professor emeritus. And I just wanted to share that, when I feel like when I use this skill, I really have something that was developed for us and with us. And I think that this is something that I'm grateful to hear that you guys are sharing across the country. So thank you.
Wow, that's great. Thanks for that comment. And yes, thank you for mentioning Mr. Miller. And they are one of the creators of MI, and there is a whole host of people that have gone into helping to bolster these skills, tools for people to be able to use them effectively over the years. And in the handout that you have is a link to the motivational interviewing website, and to also books that you'll see by Miller and others that are the foremost experts in MI to be able to help continue your education around this particular topic.
And I went ahead and put a link to, we have like a drive that has a PDF of the slides for the presentation today, as well as a handout that Sevilla has provided for all of you. Anybody else has any questions? This would be a great time, or comments, or just want to provide feedback to our speakers. That would be wonderful.
I had one.
Yes, please go ahead.
These are really good skills and everything, but I was wondering, most of your steps and everything. It seems to me that listening is a requirement for everything here on the practitioner side. Is that
Yes.
Absolutely.
listening?
Absolutely. Active listening is the most important skill that you could have. Hearing the intent of the client. Sometimes they may not say the right words, but you can tell what they mean by how they say them.
Right. Well, and listening, and the clients are also listening to you. I think that was the emphasis too, right?
Right.
Yeah. And that piece of being heard is so vital. And what I like to really press is that this is good for your personal life as well. And, in your relationships, in your friendships, with your colleagues at work. And when we can stop and pause and say, am I listening, when we don't have to provide education, when we're just having a conversation with someone, am I listening more than I'm talking? And is what I'm saying right now really about them and about where I'm trying to help them get, if it's in a case of like if they're trying to go into treatment or if they're, getting the vaccine or whatever it is my listening really respectful? Am I asking permission to share information with them? And I go back to that again, because it's so important. Just asking permission takes a person from going like, to, okay, because now they've said, yes, I'll listen. They've said they will. And so you get an open door to share what it is, just to make sure that whatever you're sharing with them is really valuable to what they are concerned about, right? So in the demonstrations we were giving, I was addressing Charlie's specific concerns about fears. Now, I could have talked about 15 other things that I may have knowledge in my mind about COVID, but I don't need to waste time on those. I just need to talk to the points she's concerned about. And that if I don't know them, then we talk about how we don't know them, right? And that's where I may be able to move into, what would be good about it? What would be bad about it? Because maybe I can't give her the information she's worried about, because I can't prove that there isn't a microchip in the vaccine. I can tell her why I don't think there's one there, but so you may not be successful with everyone, but you may get one or two takers. And if you get one or two takers, what kind of impact is that going to have down the road, right? And that's really what we need to be thinking about, is addressing, planting the seeds of change in those people's minds. So even if we're not the one to give them a vaccine or to help them get into treatment or to stop smoking or whatever it is, someone else down the road, another provider or another friend may be open. And I'll just share a personal story with you. Being able to give them the vaccine right away is so important if you have an opportunity, rather than sending them off somewhere. And let me share with you why. I had a friend of mine who was very vaccine hesitant. And so I thought, just practice with her with my MI skills, kind of, as a friend. So just having the conversation with her. And by the end of the conversation, she's like, you know what? I'm going to get vaccinated. I've just really changed my mind. And I was like, oh, that's great. Not get too excited about it. But I thought, that's great. The next time I talked to her a couple months later, I brought it up and she's like, nah, I didn't get vaccinated. I just started, worrying about the things and all of the things that made her fearful about it. So what happened is the demons got her. Her fearful demons took over. And so if we can reach them right away with the vaccine when they're ready, then that's when we're going to have the best effect. Because let me bring it back to something else. Like if we were talking about integration of medical and behavioral health, if you're in a medical setting and you refer someone to behavioral health, And they have to go to a different building to see that provider, that behavioral health provider. There's only a 30% chance that they're going to follow through with that referral. But if you have a behavioral health provider on staff ready to talk to that patient right now about whatever the particular issue is, then you have a, I don't know about 100% because they could refuse, but you have an extremely high chance that they're going to have that conversation with the behavioral health provider. So whatever it is you're trying to get them to do, have it available right away. And even if it's to make a referral to someone, that you get them on the phone rather than giving a piece of paper, you get them on the phone with the referring provider and make the appointment immediately. So they're already connected, they're already engaged. Same thing with getting them to a vaccination clinic. Maybe you get them an appointment right away to a vaccination clinic if you're not doing it there yourself, because maybe you're behavioral health and you don't do that. So make the appointment for them right away. Do something that helps to engage and commit them as quickly as possible.
Thank you. If you have questions and you don't feel like you want to bring them up, in the video, you can definitely type them into the chat as well, and we can bring them up for you. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add?
Well, if I could add on, as far as active listening, that is important, but also emphasizing the nonverbal communication as well as we directed or address, excuse me. Softening your countenance, putting a smile on your face, making eye contact. That goes a long way into garnering that respect from the client and breaking down the walls and maybe even softening them up to the point where maybe they'll say yes.
Thank you, Charlie. So important to drive those points home. When they've done research around engaging with patients and patient engagement, one of the biggest complaints patients have, and you may have had this experience yourself, is going in to see a provider, or it could even be at a business or anything like that. Anytime somebody's to engage with you, when they don't use your name, when they don't look at you, when they come off as the authority, even though you might be, but if they come off as the authority, then it tends to off-put that patient. But meeting them where they're at and bringing your humanness to the table with them, and that is more likely to engage them. What they call that a good bedside manner, right? And that's the biggest complaint people have. And it also, this is a really important piece, can help keep you from ever getting sued, because providers who make a mistake or do something wrong or say something offensive, providers who apologize actually don't get sued very often. And because you are what you do is you bring your humanness to the table and you take away the thing that they're trying to be defensive about. Say, I'm not this all perfect being who knows everything and you should follow my way. And this goes for all professionals, but that no, I'm a human being with you at this table and I care about you. And I'm sorry I got that wrong. So if you're having a conversation, you find yourself arguing, you can just backtrack and go, you know what, I think we got off to a wrong foot. Could we start again? Would that be all right? Could we start again? I really want to do this right with you. And so just to be able to apologize and backtrack and start over. And then you can bring somebody back from the edge to help bring them down. And, I say this from many years of experience in working in medical centers. I know occasionally patients can come in agitated, yelling, angry, frustrated, and they used to send me out to talk to that person before they tried to call security on them. And I thankfully didn't have a situation where I ever had to call security. So these types of things, they actually work. And we all just want to be heard. We all just want to be seen. And it doesn't have to be hard or complicated. It has to be with our intention towards the patient, even if you only have 10 or 15 minutes. pull out one or two of these skills, you may be more effective in getting a vaccinated patient or getting a patient to change their mind down the road, or at least maintaining the relationship you do have with them as a provider-patient relationship.
I saw a comment
you.
in the chat that someone said the problem with masks is people can't see your smile. Well, it was Tyra Banks that said, well, smize. You can smile with your eyes. You know, they can see a nice look, or, you know, when you smile, your cheeks go up. You can see that in a mask. And they can see it by your softened countenance as well, and when you talk with your hands.
Mm-hmm. And the way we talk matters. So if you're a monotone type of person, some of us are, you know, we're just, there's not a lot of expression. You could be a little more mindful of that. And that's where, if you're a very serious person, you can bring some humor in, which the smize, I love that. Thank you, Charlotte. So great. Thank you, Tyra Banks. Bring our smize to our masks. And know that your voice intonation is going to make a difference. And so, and I know my my ASL users here and the sign language interpreters know that when the difference between the meaning of one word can be how you express it. So you could use, and that's how we, when we talk, I could say something like, oh my God, I totally hate that. Or I could say, oh, I seriously hate that. And when really I'm like, I can't wait to eat that piece of cake, right? So I'm saying the same thing, but the intonation is different. So remember that how you express yourself behind that mask is also going to have an impact on how you're able to connect with your patient, with your client. So be mindful, if you're a monotone type person, to bring a little liveliness into your voice, especially if they can't see your face, and use more opportunity for eye contact when you can, and when it's particularly culturally relevant, depending on where you're at. It's not always culturally relevant to have strong eye contact, but you know your community, you know the people that you're working with, you're the expert in your area. And if you're not the expert in the people you're working with, if you're new to the community, new to the culture, that's where MI skills really stand out, because you don't have to know all about them. You just have to be able to have a respectful conversation with them and be able to elicit more information from them about how they feel about something, so you know how you can then address their concerns and issues. So that's why it's culturally relevant across the board. And you can't go wrong with it.
Thank you. And you wanted me to let you know, we're about 11 minutes away from closing out. I'm going to put the link back into the chat one more time for everybody who didn't see it the first time. We're going to be doing a couple things here. Did you want to go over anything else before we do our closing out? So
if there's no more questions in the chat, just know that if anybody wants to contact me, you can contact me through the Alaska Primary Care Association, and you can find that on the web, or you also can connect with me personally at my website at savellai.love. That's www.savellai.love. That's the website. Thank you.